Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when winter didn't just nip at your fingers, it gnawed straight through your bones. You're in the Middle Ages now, and let's just say insulation technology hasn't quite hit its stride. The fire in the hearth is barely more than a glow, your breath puffs in front of your face, and your blanket smells vaguely of wet sheep. This isn't just about staying warm, this is survival, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere cold, tell me your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before dawn, because the cold has no regard for your REM cycle. Your toes are stiff and possibly purple. The straw-stuffed mattress beneath you has shifted into mounds of prickly discomfort, and your wool blanket, which you share with two siblings and a scrawny cat, is doing a very poor job. You're wearing every tunic you own, but the chill still snakes in at your collar and cuffs. The first task of the day, firewood, always firewood. You don't cut it in winter. You should have stacked cords of it back in autumn. But you didn't, because you were harvesting turnips or trying not to die of dysentery. So now you trudge crunching over icy mud to scavenge branches from the forest edge. Every stick is precious. Without fuel, there is no fire. Without fire, well, you get the idea. You return with your haul and stir last night's embers. You blow, you pray, you blow again. Eventually, a flicker returns, and that's enough to reheat the cauldron of cabbage water from yesterday. Technically soup, mostly despair. Your breath fogs as you eat. You don't chew fast, partly to preserve the illusion of a meal, partly because your jaw aches from the cold. A neighbor once lost a tooth, just from biting into a frozen crust. That's not a joke. That's just Tuesday. The house is dark, smoky, and cramped. One room, packed with people. Privacy isn't a thing. Warmth is shared body heat and stale air. You stuff rags into the window gaps and hang old cloaks against the doors. Double thatch on the roof helps, unless it collapses under the snow, which happens more often than you'd like to think. Historians still argue whether medieval homes were warmer than we imagine, or if we're underestimating just how much cold a human can tolerate. What's clear is that no one's cozy. Even the Lord in his manor has to huddle near his hearth, layering on fur and complaining loudly, while his servants freeze elsewhere in silence. You keep moving, because standing still is dangerous. The moment you stop, your fingers begin to numb. So you churn butter, twist wool, patch clothes, mend tools, anything to justify motion. Your breath never stops clouding the air. Footwear. Let's talk about that luxurious concept. You've wrapped your feet in cloth, stuffed them into stiff leather boots, and hoped for the best. Wet snow seeps in anyway. Toes blacken. Sometimes they don't come back. No one talks about frostbite, because no one has time for that word. You just lose a toe and move on. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some villagers believed stuffing their shoes with crushed garlic or goose fat could keep the frost away. It didn't, of course, but it made for some very aromatic footwear. By midday, you visit the neighbors to swap goods or gossip. Community is survival. One woman shares dried apples. Another has managed to keep a hen laying. You trade your mended socks for a bit of lard. Nothing is free. Nothing goes to waste. Clothing becomes your armor. Layered wool, linen under things, leather outer wraps. If you're lucky, a second-hand cloak that smells like old smoke and pig. You wear it anyway. Color doesn't matter. Style doesn't exist. Fashion is warmth, and warmth is life. Sometimes you step outside and stare at the grey sky. There's no sun, only light through the clouds. You wonder if the seasons have frozen, if this is how the world ends. One long, hungry winter. The wind pushes against your skin like a dull blade. You go back inside. By evening, the fire is your altar. Everyone gathers around it, chasing the heat like moths. The children play with wooden toys, or just each other's hair. The elders tell stories, tales of winters worse than this one, as if that's possible. You sip weak ale, or if the stores are empty, hot water flavored with whatever roots you didn't burn for heat. The cold presses against the door like a waiting predator. Wolves roam the outskirts. You hear them sometimes. You hope they stay away. But the livestock are tense, and that usually means something's coming. Still, you lie down. You stuff your feet under your siblings' thighs, pull the blanket over your head, and hope the coals don't die before morning. Sleep isn't restful. It's a truce with the dark. You dream of spring, but wake to the reality of your frozen breath. Morning again, though you wouldn't know it by the light. It's still grey, still frigid, and your joints creak like floorboards. The fire is just ashes and hope now, and the chill has crept into your bones like it pays rent. You sit up, rub your arms, and prepare for another day of fighting off the cold with soups, sweat, and more than a dash of superstition. Breakfast is, if you're lucky, porridge. Oats, maybe barley, boiled into a paste that tastes like survival. You add a pinch of salt or dried herbs if you're feeling festive. If you're out of grain, you boil whatever's left in the cellar. Carrots, turnip greens, last fall's wrinkled apples. The broth gets thinner as winter stretches on, until it's more memory than meal. Still, warm food matters. A hot bowl is comfort and calories. You cradle it in your hands like it's a miracle. And in a way, it is. Most of your daily fuel goes to keeping your body warm. You burn through food like a furnace. And unfortunately, your pantry isn't infinite. You keep moving. Always. Activity isn't just a chore list. It's a heater. Haul water. Sweep the floor, repair the roof where the snow cracked a beam. Chop ice from the well, tend to animals, if you have them. Chickens puff like tiny snowballs in the coop. The pig grumbles in its pen, warm under a pile of hay you wish you could curl into yourself. You avoid stillness. Stillness is cold. Cold is danger. Let's talk hygiene, or the medieval version of it. You haven't bathed in weeks. Neither has anyone else. Water is too precious to waste on washing. And honestly, stripping naked in winter is a form of madness. You wipe your face with a damp cloth, rub your hands with ash to remove grease, and consider yourself reasonably clean. Bathing when it happens is a community ordeal. Once in a while, the whole family crowds into a wooden tub in the center of the room. Water is heated over the fire, poured in carefully. You soak in order of importance. Father first, then mother, then the kids. By the end, it's basically people soup. Some believed winter bathing was actually dangerous, that opening your pores let in sickness. Others insisted that foul smells attracted demons, or worse, disease. Historians still argue whether these beliefs came from religious teaching, observation of illness, or just a healthy aversion to freezing to death, mid-rinse. You step outside briefly and hear distant church bells. Sound carries further in winter. The air is sharper, thinner. If the path's not too icy, you trudge to the chapel. Not for piety exactly, though everyone pretends otherwise, but because it's warm. Candlelight, pressed bodies, thick stone walls. It's a break from your own damp dwelling. The sermon is hard to follow, mostly Latin, mostly mumbled. You're too busy watching the flicker of flames and thinking about the bread you left at home, crisping near the coals, hopefully not burning. Superstition is thick this time of year. Cold brings out the folklore. You throw salt on the threshold to keep out spirits. You avoid whistling after dark. It invites frost demons. You hang iron charms near the hearth. One neighbor insists she saw a snow witch once, walking across the frozen field barefoot. No one laughs. Not really. A fringe belief in some rural areas. If you sleep with a potato under your pillow, it draws the cold out of your bones. Of course, that potato could also be dinner, so there's always a bit of inner conflict there. By midday, smoke drifts from chimneys across the village. It's a sign of life. If a roof doesn't smoke, you worry. Maybe they ran out of wood. Maybe they're ill. Maybe the cold won. You stop by, just in case. You bring soup, even if it's terrible. Especially if it's terrible, kindness and calories. Both are rare this season. The hearth is still your lifeline. It's not just for cooking. It's where you dry your clothes, warm your tools, tell your stories, and stretch your toes toward the faint illusion of summer. You keep it burning even when fuel is scarce. Ashes become currency. Burnt wood leaves a powder you can use to scrub pots, whiten cloth, or sprinkle in outhouses to reduce the stink. Nothing is wasted. By afternoon, your breath is constantly visible. Indoors or out, it fogs like mist. Children make games of it, pretending to be dragons, breathing cold fire. You try not to think about how small and thin they look in this light, how quiet they've gotten. Inside, your skin itches under layers of wool. Sweat and grime build up. Fleas thrive in warmth. Even this meager amount, you scratch without thinking. Everyone does. A little misery you carry with you, like a badge. Some nights you gather at a neighbor's. They're telling stories again, old ones about saints who never felt cold, or wolves who spoke human words. The kind of tales that feel real when the wind howls. One old man claims he survived the white year. A winter so bad the rivers turned solid, and birds fell from the sky. You nod as if you haven't heard it every year since you were 5. Still, storytelling is warmth. Laughter is warmth. Anything that distracts from your frozen fingers is worth clinging to. You walk home slowly, slipping once on a patch of black ice. You curse the mud, the wind, your boots, then thank the stars. Your nose didn't meet the ground. Pride is no match for frostbite. Back home, someone spilled the last of the lard. It glistens on the floor like treasure. You scrape it up with a piece of bread and eat it. No judgment. That's a calorie you didn't have 5 minutes ago. You sleep in the same bundle of limbs and blankets. You curl into each other like spoons. The cat purrs softly, half for comfort, half to steal heat. Outside, the snow thickens. Tomorrow might be worse. It might be better. You've stopped predicting. Another day, another layer of frost inside the window. That's right, inside. You squint up at the tiny crystals framing the sill, wondering how it's possible for ice to bloom indoors. But then, everything is strange in the deep of winter. You cough once, sharply, and hope it's not the beginning of something. Everyone's a little sick by now, and no one wants to admit it. The fire is dead again. You kneel, shivering, blowing life back into charcoal bits, like you're trying to convince them of something. Eventually, the smoke curls up and catches. Success. Your reward: slightly less frozen feet, and a hint of warmth under your fingernails. The cottage is cold, damp and crowded. Sickness spreads like spilled milk. A sniffle becomes a fever becomes silence. You try not to look at the child in the corner, who hasn't stirred all morning. Just yesterday, she was laughing at a joke about a goat wearing a hat. This is winter now, not just cold and hunger, but a slow erosion of food, of health, of people. You step outside for air, if not for warmth. Your boots crunch over snow and filth. The sky is a washed-out grey, heavy and unpromising. A dog barks in the distance. Thin, hoarse, tired. Just like you, the community still helps, in small ways. Someone leaves a bundle of kindling at your doorstep. You pass on a crust of bread to an old man who's too proud to ask. Survival is no longer about self. It's about keeping someone going. If not you, then at least them. There's strength in shared hardship. You all know who's struggling, who's still got dried beans hidden in the rafters, who's mourning quietly but pretending otherwise. You don't talk about it much. Just nod, share a cup of watered ale, and sit near the fire. Even the animals are feeling it. Chickens have stopped laying. Cows grow thin despite everything. The pig gives you side-eye, aware that if things get much worse it might become dinner. You pet it gently, as if to say, not yet. One woman down the road has a secret. Her goats sleep inside. That's right, 2 goats, right in her kitchen. She claims their body heat is better than firewood, and honestly, she might be onto something. Sure, it smells like a barn in there, but it is warmer. Desperate times, desperate goats. You spend more time lying down now, not because you're lazy, but because movement burns energy you don't have. You're thinner than you were last month. Your belt has new holes punched into it. You pull your blanket tighter and try not to shiver. Somewhere in the village, the priest is preaching about patience and suffering, that God tests the faithful with frost. You wonder if God might consider a slightly shorter exam next time. Then again, medieval faith isn't always about comfort. It's about endurance, about clinging to something bigger than yourself when everything else is crumbling. By twilight, the smoke from chimney tops is steady. A good sign. People are still here. You sing softly to yourself, half-remembered lyrics passed down from your mother. Something about spring and birds and blooming trees. It's laughable now, but you whisper it anyway. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers truly believed winter was a punishment, or whether they simply accepted it as the world's natural cruelty. Maybe it doesn't matter. When you're this cold, philosophy takes a back seat to stew and socks. Dinner tonight is humble. Barley porridge, with a piece of dried onion, and a pinch of thyme. You close your eyes after each bite, pretending it's richer, thicker, meatier. Your stomach thanks you for the fantasy. Someone is coughing again, the bad kind. You pretend not to hear it. You tend the fire instead. Stoke the logs just right. Reposition the stones so the heat lasts longer. It's your evening ritual. A small, sacred act of defiance against the freeze. Sleep approaches like a fog. You lie close to the others. The youngest hums quietly, just a few notes. No one tells her to stop. It's the sound of life, and that's rare enough to treasure. You dream, when you can, of warmth, of sun on your face, of rivers flowing instead of freezing, of ripe pears and cool breezes that don't carry the bite of frost. You dream, and for a few hours, that's enough. The cold, at last, begins to retreat. Not entirely, never entirely, But little by little, the bite becomes a nip. The snow melts into slush, and the sky, though still grey, seems a shade less heavy. You notice the smallest things now, a drip from the eaves, the sound of birdsong, just one brave, tentative note, a hint of green pushing through the mud. Your breath still fogs the air, but the sun lingers a little longer each day, and with it comes the faintest promise that you've made it this far. Inside, the fire still crackles, softer now, lower. You pull the blanket higher and let your shoulders drop. The worst of winter might be behind you, or maybe not, but for tonight, you're safe. You're wrapped in quiet, in slowness, in the heavy peace of exhaustion. The wind outside isn't howling anymore. It sighs. Your neighbors are quiet too. Fire's low, voices hushed. Even the livestock seem calmer, as if they've also noticed something is shifting. A change, subtle but unmistakable. The stillness isn't fear now. It's rest. It's relief. You close your eyes and feel the weight of the season settle behind you. Your body aches, your fingers are raw, but your heart is steady, slow, tired, yes, but still here. And in this moment, that's enough. You breathe, you listen, you drift. Sleep comes slowly, like a warm blanket folded over your thoughts. The dark isn't so sharp now. It's soft. It hums. You've survived one more night.